My name is Victoria. My family made up a story about me being a drug addict to explain why I stopped going home, and I was 42 when they last saw me. The contradiction wasn't forgotten as I repositioned my protective vest in the Riverside County Courthouse parking lot. After 23 years of radio silence, I was ready to enter California's largest federal racketeering case. Past, it would demolish everything my family had, established by deceit and the systemic abuse of foreign laborers in their legal construction business. For the past 3 years, I had been following the Moretti family business because they had been laundering money for the Sinaloa cartel, utilizing undocumented immigrants as throwaway labor, and threatening deportation when they sought fair wages or essential safety gear. 18 people had perished in accidents that could have been avoided. For my Uncle Tony to purchase a new yacht, 18 households were destroyed. I went over the case files one last time as the sun was sinking behind the courtroom. As the principal U.S. Marshal for the 3-year undercover probe Operation Bloodline, I would testify tomorrow. It had ultimately led to the collapse of the Moretti construction syndicate. My family would discover tomorrow that the drug-addled college dropout had spent the better part of 20 years operating under pretenses, handling cases ranging from human trafficking to international terrorism. However, I was just Vicky tonight. The letdown, the one incapable of managing actual responsibility. 23 years previously, simply said, Victoria did not. Uncle Tony had added, "You're cut out for this kind of work," as his voice carried across the kitchen to where I sat bent over my criminal law textbooks. I was 19, sleeping 4 hours a night, and working 2 jobs to pay for community college, and still maintaining a 3.8% GPA. She is very sensitive and sentimental. Check her out. She has trouble keeping her eyes open. My mother gave a nod, passing another check to my cousin Marco, who had recently failed his second university, but was still considered the family's golden boy. It's a natural thing for Marco, leadership attributes. In law enforcement, that is what you need. I had submitted applications for every federal program I could locate. FBI, DEA, and U.S. Marshal Service. I kept every application a secret from my family at dinners when they discussed whether I would survive another semester or if I should just meet a good boy and have a family. At 6 o'clock, Marco was already enjoying a beer while leaning back in his chair. Furthermore, Vicky is constantly crying over some sob tale, which is part of her bleeding heart syndrome. If you're concerned about harming people, you can't be productive. Sentiments. That's exactly right, Tony said. The reputation of this family must be upheld. We don't need it, he said, gesturing hazily toward me. We don't require our name to be associated with weakness. My tendency to wonder why their building sites had such high accident rates, and why workers always seem to evaporate following mishaps. Which is why, even though I assisted with basic accounting during the summer, the accounts never completely balanced. Caring about others being harmed was the flaw. After Tony pulled me away, I stopped asking questions. Kindly explained that the money I had saved for college tuition may vanish as quickly as it had appeared. Family ties are necessary for family companies. You know that, Victoria? I understand completely. I also realized that I had pending character references listed at every federal academy where I had applied. References I was unable to supply without harming my personal inquiry that was already underway in their ledgers. Rather, I vanished. 2 years later, my family's entire world revolved around the U.S. Marshal's Training Academy in Gleno, Georgia. Believed that I was too frail to manage. 6 months of legal process, firearms proficiency, psychological testing, and tactical instruction. I placed second in my class when I graduated. My relatives believed that I was in treatment. I would believe it. Permit them to disseminate rumors about my drug abuse and mental illness. Let them sadly shake their heads when people inquired about the niece of Tony Moret, who was struggling to manage her life. It was simpler than explaining why I was unable to get in touch with them and why I had to vanish entirely from their world to fulfill my obligations. In actuality, my family connections were the reason I had been hired. It is because of them, not despite them. The Marshal Service had been investigating. For years, Moretti Construction observed the pattern of fatalities at work, the dubious financial transactions, and the disappearance of employees following injury claims. They required an insider with easy access, someone the family believed was too frail to pose a threat, someone they trusted. The steps of the courthouse today. As I finished my final preparations, the courthouse was bustling with federal agents and reporters. I would stand as the lead witness against my own family in the largest RICO case in the district's history, which would start in a few hours. My FBI liaison, Special Agent Martinez, came up holding a tablet, displaying news reports. The family's legal team, Marshal is already arguing that this is prosecutorial overreach. They assert that they were unaware of any illegal activities. This did not surprise me. Selective ignorance and plausible deniability had been the cornerstones of the Moretti's reputation. What about the employees that we moved? Safe? The 18 families have all been placed in protective housing while their legal status is being processed. The kids are enrolled in school. They will be all right. In that was the important thing. 18 families, some of whom had been silent for years, were at last given protection and the opportunity to obtain legal status. Their testimonies would support the financial data I'd acquired over the course of 3 years of wearing a wire to business meetings, Christmas parties, and family dinners. Marshal Martinez seemed worried. Do you feel prepared for this situation? I'm aware of testifying. The moment I found out that they were wagering on whose employee would die next, they ceased to be my family. It was right. The betting slips had been discovered in Tony's workplace safe. Real money bets on workplace deaths, akin to a lottery at a macabre office. My hands were still shaking with anger at the recollection. The courtroom the following morning. Downtown Los Angeles' federal courthouse was crowded. Federal agents, defense lawyers, the media, and my family in the rear rows. I hadn't witnessed them. 23 years. Uncle Tony was aging poorly. Too much expensive food and stress, most likely from managing a criminal enterprise. It was made worse somehow by the fact that Marco looked the same. Between them, my mother sat with the same look of disapproving concern that she had perfected when I was a teenager. I wasn't recognized by them. 20 years of tactical. More than only my posture had changed as a result of training. From the rear of the courtroom, I was 42 years old, dressed in a well-tailored federal uniform with unreadable insignia. My shoulders are broader from years of physical training, and I am shorter and more professional. The sight of things they couldn't have imagined made my face tougher. However, as they had never actually seen me before, I was largely invisible to them. Deputy U.S. Marshal Victoria Elena Moretti is called to the witness stand by the prosecution. There was instantaneous and total silence. With my marshal's badge visible on my belt, my service weapon securely fastened, and every aspect of my demeanor reflecting my 23 years of federal service. As my family looked on in disbelief, the bailiff swore me in. The prosecutor, Marshal Moretti, started, "Kindly provide your length of service and current position. Currently serving on the Fugitive Task Team, I am a Deputy U.S. Marshal with the Los Angeles District. I served in the United States Army, 21 years in the Marshal Service. I had served with the DEA's Covert Operations Section for 2 years before that." Someone gasped behind me. Probably my mom. "What connection do you have to the defendants?" "My uncle is Anthony Moretti. One of my cousins is Marco Moretti. My company is Moretti Construction Company. Family business. Or it was, before the start of this inquiry. Marshal Moretti, could you please tell the court how this inquiry started?" I turned just enough to get a glimpse of my family's expressions in my peripheral vision. Tony, uncle, had turned white. Marco was babbling to their lawyer in a panic. My mom appeared on the verge of passing out. A combined federal task force that looked into worker fatalities and human trafficking in the construction sector reached me 3 years ago. They required a representative who had easy access to Moretti Construction's internal processes. A family member they could trust. No one would ever suspect. Why wouldn't they suspect you at all? Because they believed that I was a drug addict who had left community college 3 many years ago. It shook the courtroom. I heard my mother choking in the rear. Marshal Moretti, in those 23, what was your actual career advancement over the years? In many ways, my service record was a military citation, and I recited it as such. 21 years in the U.S. Marshal Service, 2 years as an undercover DEA agent, specific instruction in financial crimes, organized crime, and human trafficking. Operations in 3 states are commendable. Currently serving as the top deputy on the West Coast Fugitive Task Force. Did you stay in touch with your family during this period? No contacts. My task requires total segregation in order to keep the security of operations. What did your family think occurred to you? They were informed that I was undergoing long-term therapy after experiencing a mental breakdown linked to drug usage. I advised them not to get in touch with me. The testimony, which detailed 23 years of deception and inquiry, was harsh, but it was also required. All of the information that was recorded, including financial crimes, witness reports of labor harassment, and safety violations, was rushing through my testimony like water through a broken dam. The defense lawyer was a shark in a pricey suit, but he had nothing to work with. How do you cross-examine someone who used government surveillance equipment to chronicle crimes for 3 years? The Marshal tried to make Moretti. You have had animosity for your family for years, isn't that right? The true motivation behind this probe is personal retaliation. I gave him a steady stare. I have dedicated 23 years of my life, sir, to defending those like the employees your clients murdered. There would have been a lot less paperwork, and retribution would have been much easier. Despite itself, the courtroom chuckled. Don't ask anything else. Courthouse hallway following testimony. I found them waiting for me outside the courtroom. The whole set? My mom came to me first, tears running down her cheeks. I don't get it, Vicky. As you stated, everybody silently, I confessed that I was a drug addict. 23 years. You gave them the impression that I was helpless, weak, and a disgrace to the family name. Weave, as we were informed, she was stuttering and reaching for me as if I needed consolation because I was just 19. I took a firm, but not harsh, step back. Uncle Tony made a push for his cheeks were flushed with anger. Your own family was ruined by you. You're our child. We've told you that you killed 18 people. Thank you. To get families to stop reporting safety issues, deportation threats were made. You had betting pools on which employee would pass away next. He fell silent. Marco came next, still looking for a way in. Vicky, hurry up. Family is kinship. We can make this work. I said, Deputy U.S. Marshal Moretti. No, we are unable to. Find a solution. You are charged with conspiracy, accessory to murder, and racketeering at the federal level. However, you are a member of our family. No, I answered, and my tone carried. The power of 20 years of federal service. I work as a law enforcement official. You're criminals. The minute you decided to make money out of people's deaths, the familial relationship was over. My mom was still crying and groping for the broken girl they had made up to justify my absence. You are loved nevertheless. You've always been loved by us. You adored the notion that I was a failure. It gave you more confidence in your decisions, I remarked. You never wanted to know the real me, the person who defended the individuals you killed for 23 years. I turned to go, then halted. As it happens, you were correct about one thing. Your kind of work was too delicate for me. I could never have survived on 18. I have blood on my hands. 6 months later, the families received the penalties they were due. Tony's life was boosted by 25. Marco was sentenced to 15 years. The building itself. Profits from the company's liquidation were used to compensate victims. Upon the anniversary of the arrests, I received a card from the 18 families I had assisted with their relocation. Their kids were doing quite well in school. The grown-ups had secured respectable occupations, with businesses that prioritized their security and well-being. My biological family was never seen by me again. They wrote letters from behind bars. Tony is furious. Marco is so full of self-pity. My mom is filled with remorse and guilt. I did not respond to them. Some betrayals are too basic to overlook. Not because of what was done, but because of what it shows about people's true selves when they believe no one is looking. I had been watching for 23 years. The actual triumph wasn't the convictions or the corresponding punishments. The families who had lost everything due to my family's greed weren't even given justice. The true triumph was leaving that courthouse as the person I had always been. Someone who did not take advantage of others but rather protected them. Someone who decided to take the more difficult route because it was the right one. Someone who prefers to be effective and underappreciated, rather than both admired and cooperative. For 23 years, my family had been telling everyone that I wasn't strong enough for their world. They were totally correct. My strength was sufficient. For quite a bit better,